They didn't lose because they were weak. They lost because they refused to listen. A kingdom so powerful that it thought warnings were insults. So when messengers came, they weren't heard, they were silenced. And that moment sealed their fate, because history proves one terrifying truth. You can kill the messenger, but you cannot kill what's coming. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't just history. It's a psychological pattern repeating in today's world. Warning 10: When power stops listening. At the height of its power, the Zulu kingdom believed something dangerous. We are untouchable. This belief didn't come from arrogance alone. It was built on real victories. They had crushed enemies. They had dominated regions. They had built one of the most disciplined warrior cultures in history. But success has a hidden poison. It slowly removes the need to listen. Warnings started arriving, subtle signals that a new kind of enemy was approaching. But instead of analyzing them, they dismissed them, because in their world, only the weak needed warnings. And that's where the fall begins. Not when enemies rise, but when listening dies. Warning 9: When warnings feel like insults. The British didn't start with war. They started with pressure, demands, and diplomatic signals. These were warnings in disguise. But inside the Zulu leadership, something twisted the perception. Why are they telling us what to do? Who are they to warn us? The message wasn't processed as strategy. It was processed as disrespect. And this is one of the most dangerous psychological traps. When truth feels like an attack, you stop seeing reality clearly. Instead of asking, "What are they preparing?" they asked, "How dare they?" And just like that, emotion replaced intelligence. Warning 8: When ego overrides strategy. Ego doesn't shout, it whispers. You already know enough. The Zulu military was unmatched in close combat. Their formations, discipline, and speed were terrifying. But war was changing. The British brought advanced firearms, long-range coordination, strategic supply systems. But here's the fatal mistake. The Zulu didn't underestimate British weapons. They overestimated themselves. They believed, no matter what they bring, we will adapt. But belief without preparation is not confidence. It's self-deception. Warning 7: The danger of past victories. Past victories are powerful, but they create a silent illusion. The future will look like the past. The Zulu had won before. They had crushed threats before. So mentally, they were fighting yesterday's war. But the British weren't fighting yesterday's war. They were fighting a new one. With new rules, new systems, new patience. And when you fight the future, with the mindset of the past, you don't lose slowly, you collapse suddenly. Warning 6: Misunderstanding the enemy. The Zulu saw warriors, but the British were more than soldiers. They were an empire. Behind every soldier was industry, supply chains, reinforcements, global strategy. The Zulu prepared for battle, but the British prepared for war. And that difference is everything. Because you can win battles, and still lose everything. Warning 5: When silencing feels like control. As tension increased, criticism became dangerous. Voices that questioned decisions, voices that suggested caution, were not encouraged. They were suppressed, because leadership believed, Unity means no disagreement. Strength means no doubt. But real strength does something different. It listens to uncomfortable truths. The moment a system starts silencing its own warnings, it stops correcting itself. And from that moment, collapse becomes inevitable. Warning: for the moment reality arrives too late. Reality doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day, it hits all at once. The Zulu kingdom had ignored signals, dismissed warnings, silenced doubt. But then came the battlefield. And suddenly, the enemy they thought they understood became something else entirely. The British didn't fight like the enemies before. They didn't rush blindly. They didn't rely only on courage. They calculated. They positioned. They adapted. And in that moment, something terrifying happened. The Zulu were still brave, still disciplined, still powerful, but they were now out of sync with reality. And when reality shifts, and you don't adjust, you get overwhelmed. Warning: 3 winning battles, losing the war. There's a dangerous illusion in conflict. If we win here, we're still in control. And at first, it seemed true. The Zulu achieved one of the most shocking victories in history, a moment that proved their raw strength was still unmatched. But here's what they didn't see. The British could lose a battle and still continue the war. The Zulu could win a battle, but couldn't replace what they lost. Because this wasn't just about fighting. It was about sustainability. The British had reserves, weapons, logistics. The Zulu had courage. But courage doesn't refill supplies. Courage doesn't rebuild systems. And slowly, quietly, the balance shifted. Warning: 2 when the system can't correct itself. Every strong system has one survival mechanism: the ability to self-correct, to admit mistakes, to adjust strategy, to listen when something feels wrong. But the Zulu leadership had crossed a dangerous line. They had created an environment where questioning looked like betrayal, doubt looked like weakness, warning looked like fear. So even when reality became obvious, the system couldn't adapt fast enough. Because adaptation requires something pride cannot tolerate. We were wrong. And by the time that realization began to surface, it was already too late. Warning: 1 the final collapse. Collapse doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in layers. First, you ignore. Then, you dismiss. Then, you silence. And finally, you face the consequence. The British returned, stronger, more prepared, more relentless. And this time, the outcome was different. The Zulu kingdom, once feared across the land, began to fall, not because they lacked bravery, but because they had lost something far more important: the ability to listen, the ability to adapt, the ability to accept truth before it's too late. And that's how powerful systems die. Not from the outside, but from the inside. Modern parallel: this is happening again. Now stop. Because this isn't just history. Look at the world today. Whistleblowers speak, they get silenced. Experts warn, they get ignored. Insiders expose truth, they get discredited. Why? Because the message is dangerous? No, because the message is inconvenient. Because it threatens power. Because it exposes cracks. Because it forces change. So instead of fixing the problem, systems try to remove the voice. The darkest truth. Here's the reality most people don't want to accept. Every system thinks it's in control. Until it isn't. Every power believes it's different. Until it collapses. Every warning sounds small. Until it becomes reality. And the most dangerous moment is always the same. When a system believes it no longer needs to listen. Ask yourself this. Right now. In your life. In your environment. In the world around you. What warnings are being ignored? What truths feel uncomfortable, but real? And most importantly, are we listening, or are we silencing? Because history doesn't repeat exactly. It repeats psychologically. If this made you think, even a little, subscribe now. Because this is not just a series of stories. This is a series of warnings. And the next one might be closer to your reality than you expect.